Some sacrifices last a moment, some sacrifices last a lifetime, and some echo for generations. This is Summit After the Storm podcast, and I'm Bart Wilbanks. Today is Memorial Day. For many people, it's a long weekend. Cookouts, baseball, time with family, maybe a day off of work. But underneath all of that is something much deeper: sacrifice. And the older I get, the more I think about sacrifice differently, because all of us sacrifice things in life. Parents sacrifice sleep, time, energy, money, freedom. Leaders sacrifice comfort. Athletes sacrifice convenience. People chasing goals sacrifice time and security. Climbing Kilimanjaro required sacrifice. Training, discomfort, pain, time away from home. And I think challenge teaches you something important. You start realizing that meaningful things usually cost something. But if I'm being honest with myself, none of my sacrifices remotely compare to the men and women we remember on Memorial Day. I was raised to have manners. And if I see an elderly person or someone disabled when I'm on a public transportation, I give up my seat. That's just how I was raised. I try to help people when I can, try to be kind, to make sacrifices for my family, but the truth is I've never sacrificed my life for someone else. And that's what makes Memorial Day different. Because some men and women gave up everything: their future, their dreams, their families, their tomorrows. People who never got to grow old, never got to retire, never got to hold grandchildren, never got another ordinary Monday. And generations later, their sacrifices still echo. Memorial Day also feels personal because of my family history. Growing up, my family had a framed certificate honoring my mom's father's brother, my great uncle, Edward O. White, who was killed during World War II. I never knew him. I was born long after that war ended, but I grew up hearing my grandfather talk about losing his brother, showing me the letter he received when he was killed, missing in action. And my mom would talk about how deeply it impacted her father, my grandfather, throughout his life. And after my grandfather passed away, my mom wanted me to have that certificate, that framed certificate that he received to honor his brother who was killed. So now it hangs with me as a reminder that sacrifice echoes through generations. And on the other side of my family, my dad's father also served during World War II. I only met my grandfather a handful of times growing up, so I never really got to know him. But later in life, I learned in his obituary that it says he served the United States Army during World War II and received 3 Purple Hearts and a Bronze Star. 3 Purple Hearts. And while thinking about this episode, I went back to read that obituary again. And I'm including a link in this podcast description. Not because I knew him very well personally, I didn't. But because as I've gotten older, I've developed a deeper respect for what those medals likely represented, and the sacrifices made by so many people from that generation. And later in life, when I learned about the 3 Purple Hearts and the Bronze Star, it kind of changed the way I thought about him. Because a Purple Heart means you were wounded in combat. 3 Purple Hearts means that happened multiple times. And a Bronze Star is rewarded for heroic or meritorious service in a combat zone. So while I may not know all the details that he experienced during World War II, those medals tell me enough to understand that he saw things and survived things that most people never will. And the truth is, I don't know much about him personally because he struggled with relationships. He wasn't present in my father's life or our lives. He was married many times. As I've gotten older, I sometimes wondered how much of the war followed him home afterward. Because some people come home from war physically, but part of them never fully leaves. Maybe Memorial Day should also remind us that sacrifice doesn't always end when the battle ends. Sometimes the echo lasts for generations. Kilimanjaro taught me something about gratitude too. When you suffer long enough on a mountain, you stop taking the simple things for granted. Warmth, breathing easily, shelter, water, safety. Hardship has a way of exposing how blessed we really are. And maybe gratitude grows strongest when we remember that others sacrificed so that we could live the lives that we now consider normal. John chapter 15 verse 13 says, "Love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends." That verse feels especially meaningful today because Memorial Day reminds us that freedom was never free. Real leadership almost always involves sacrifice. Good parents sacrifice. Good spouses sacrifice. Good leaders sacrifice. And good friends sacrifice. But some sacrifices rise above all the others. And today is about remembering the people who gave everything for people they would never meet. Today, enjoy your family. Enjoy the cookout. Enjoy the laughter. And enjoy the freedom. Somewhere during the day, pause long enough to remember why you have those freedoms in the first place. Because some sacrifices echo forever. If this resonated with you, follow the podcast on Spotify, Amazon, Apple Music, YouTube, or whatever platform you're listening on, and you can learn more at summitafterstorm.com. And until next time, keep climbing. Holy poly.